The Silence of the Flower. Episode 5. Soap's house kitchen. How much do you want? Yoongi asked. 1 crore, Jin replied coolly. Yoongi's eyes widened in shock. 1 crore. Behind them, Namjoon began to choke violently on his water, spilling it all over himself. K-ka, 1 crore. Yes, 1 crore. Why, too cheap, Jin retorted without turning back. Yoongi narrowed his eyes. I said I'll pay you. Not buy the house. Namjoon coughed again. You're paying him. Paying? For what? Jin shut off the water, the sudden silence signaling a shift in the air. He turned, his face devoid of its earlier playfulness. Say that again. Yoongi tightened his jaw. I asked if you could stay here for a few days and take care of Hoseok. I'll pay you. Before Yoongi could even blink, smack. Jin slapped the back of his head, not hard enough to injure, but sharp enough to be a stinging insult. Domestic violence, Namjoon gasped. Shut up, Jin snapped, his eyes flashing with disappointment. You think I'm some babysitter you hire with money? You said we're family. Then why are you talking like this? If Hoseok is unwell, I'll stay because he needs help. Not because you throw money at me. Namjoon nodded aggressively. Yes, exactly. Also 1 crore is too low. Jin elbowed him hard, silencing him. Yoongi looked away, his pride warring with the panic in his chest. I didn't mean it like that. Then don't say it like that, Jin shot back. If you're worried, say you're worried. If you need help, say you need help. Don't act like some mafia boss solving everything with money. The silence hung heavy. Jin searched Yoongi's face, seeing through the mask of cold authority. Is it serious? The stitches reopened, Yoongi whispered. Jin's eyes widened, his expression darkening instantly. Reopened? How? Yoongi didn't answer. The silence was the confession. You idiot, Jin repeated, quieter this time. Not angry, disappointed. Yoongi didn't argue, he just stood there, jaw tight, eyes lowered, a rare sight. Namjoon looked between them nervously. Maybe we should not. Stay out of this, Jin muttered. Yoongi finally spoke, voice rough. I didn't think it would reopen. That's exactly the problem, Jin replied. You don't think. Silence again. Soap's house balcony. The air in the kitchen was thick with the weight of Yoongi's confession, but none of them realized that the true gravity of the moment was unfolding just out of sight. From the shadows of the second-floor balcony, a pair of eyes watched the scene unfold below, unnoticed by the men embroiled in the argument. Hoseok stood silently, his fingers resting against the cold metal railing, listening to the echoes of their voices rising through the open-plan architecture of the house. We're family. That was why he had reached out to Jin, and why he had insisted he stay. Family. Hoseok's lips quirked into a smile that never reached his eyes. So, that was what family looked like. People who dared to scold you, people who stayed because they chose to rather than for a payout, and people who weren't afraid to hit you when you were wrong. He lowered his gaze, his expression shifting from curiosity to a hollow, distant calm. Understanding their dynamic didn't erase his own reality. Just because Yoongi now called Namjoon his family, did it change the past? Would the 3 small, innocent souls ever come back? No. Would the nights of humiliation simply vanish? No. The wounds might eventually close on his skin, but they were permanently etched into his heart. Hoseok slowly reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing against a small, silent piece of paper, the card that still held a dangerous amount of meaning. He stared at it for a long time, tracing its edges as the argument downstairs began to fade into a dull hum. He didn't show anger. He didn't shed a tear. He simply settled into something colder, something unreachable. Downstairs, Yoongi was still enduring Jin's sharp, corrective discipline. Upstairs, Hoseok was methodically rebuilding the walls he had momentarily let down. He turned away from the balcony, moving without a sound, his departure entirely unnoticed by the men below. He reached the bedroom, stepped inside, and clicked the lock into place. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he pulled the card out again, staring at it in the dim light of the room. Nothing changes, right? He whispered to the empty room. The silence that followed was absolute. Few days later, hotel room. The hotel room felt heavy, the silence pressing in from all sides, thick and suffocating. Jimin sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulders hunched, while Yoongi stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the blurred city skyline. Jimin was crying, his grief quiet and soundless, a misery Yoongi hadn't even noticed. Jimin, let's stop meeting secretly like this, Yoongi said, his voice deep and heavy, vibrating in the still air. Let's stop doing something wrong behind everyone's backs. I don't have a problem, Jimin whispered, his voice trembling as he fought to hold back fresh tears. Taehyung is treating me well these days, but Jungkook, sometimes. Yoongi finally caught the hitch in Jimin's breath and realized he was weeping. He turned sharply. The sight of the tears tracking down Jimin's face hit him like a physical blow. The moment Jimin met his eyes, the dam broke. Jimin buried his face in his hands, his body shaking with the force of his sobs. Yoongi was across the room in 2 strides, pulling him into a desperate embrace. Don't cry, I understand, Yoongi murmured, his own voice laced with a raw, hollow sadness. Being together for so long and then suddenly separating, it hurts. Jimin suddenly pushed Yoongi away, his eyes flashing with a sharp, angry fire that cut through the softness of the moment. It's not that. I'm not crying because I'm sad about leaving you. It's something else. Jimin fell silent, his throat tightening. He couldn't say it. The words were a poison he didn't know how to spit out. Yoongi stood stunned, a flicker of disappointment crossing his face at the realization that Jimin's tears weren't for their impending end, but he buried it, focusing instead on the younger man's distress. Then what is it? Yoongi asked. Jimin stared down at the carpet, his hands trembling. I'm pregnant. 1 month. It's your child. The world seemed to grind to a halt. Yoongi's heart skipped a beat, then hammered against his ribs in a chaotic rhythm of shock and disbelief. He stared at Jimin, his mind reeling. No, this is Taehyung's or Jungkook's, you're lying. Slap. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Yoongi's head snapped to the side, the stinging imprint of Jimin's palm blossoming across his cheek. What would I gain from lying? Jimin shouted, his voice cracking with rage. Was it good for you when you were inside me? If this was Taehyung's or Jungkook's child, why would I be crying like this? It's been a month since they even touched me. If I tell them this, they won't believe me, and I won't tell them. You're the reason. Last time, you didn't use anything, that's why this happened. I'm leaving. I can't stay here anymore. Jimin turned and bolted for the door. Yoongi surged forward, grabbing Jimin's wrist to anchor him. Jimin, wait, we still. But Jimin slapped him again, harder this time, and wrenched himself free. He disappeared out into the hallway. Yoongi stumbled after him, but it was too late. He watched from the threshold as Jimin threw himself into his car and peeled away, leaving Yoongi standing alone in the deafening silence of the aftermath. To be continued.